Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the agreement between the IMF and Pakistan, and at the same time the stock market that is surging with every passing day. Is this surge temporary, long-term? Can it be maintained? What are the macroeconomic policies that need to be put into place or continued post-elections with the new government as well, in order for this policy to sustain, in order for our economy to further strengthen? We've been joined by Fahim Sardar. He's a senior policy specialist, and he is here in the studio. Fahim, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the key elements of this staff-level agreement that has been reached between the IMF and Pakistan that will, pave the way for the release of the 700 million second tranche of the SBA. What are the key points that the IMF and Pakistan have agreed upon?
Well, the key points are basically to continue the reform process, to fulfill the reform process, to make sure that revenues are going to continuously increase through greater taxation and lower subsidies, to make sure that the Pakistan's electricity grid, the circular debt, and all these things are somehow managed. So if we sum it up, it is basically to keep things on track. That's why things are moving forward, because the IMF believes that we are moving ahead, still moving ahead with the reforms, which usually tend to, if you recall, in many of the programs, they sort of used to go off track. And that's why there used to be a break, and then it would start, and then it would stop, and then restart.
The caretaker government seems quite, one side of focused as far as the IMF agreement is concerned.
That's true, and it's quite broad-based, the consensus of what needs to be done with the IMF, because we cannot. Pakistan is really in no position right now to sort of change its course at this moment. We have to get through with this difficult period, and once our revenues start rising domestically, and as soon as our exports start increasing, which will of course bring in foreign exchange, then we can sort of think of some new angle to take. However, right now I think everybody's on the same page that we have to continue with the IMF program as it is, and the reform process is going to continue as per the agreement with the IMF.
All right, let's talk about these reforms, especially the cost-reducing reforms in the energy sector. Yeah. How important are they, and how important is the continuation? Because, of course, elections are around the horizon as well. Yeah. So how important will these energy-related reforms be as per the IMF requirements?
Okay, this is a tough question, because energy reforms are extremely important because they're based on import costs. Because $19 billion of our imports are just POL, petroleum, oil, and lubricants. So when we talk about reducing those costs, that's dependent on the rupee rate and the consumption and the demand and the supply and what's happening internationally. So it's like a minefield. You're going through a minefield. But having said that, Pakistan we have to very strenuously, very critically reduce unnecessary costs in the energy sector. Whatever we can save, we've got some projects which are not that effective and efficient. We are, by the way, gradually taking them out of the grid, putting more efficient projects in it, but that's a long-term thing. Right now, as you know, this IMF tranche is not a long-term thing. It's basically a very short-term thing. So when we talk about the short-term, we have to focus on price. We have to focus on how much volatility there is in the oil market. Right, oil has started rising again in the international market. I mean, with what's going on in Ukraine, with what's now going on in the Mideast, you've got things expanding in the Mideast. The conflict, it's not dying down. Currently, it's expanding. So imagine what it can do to the oil price. So right now, we need to reduce our costs, and up to the point that we can generate our own oil. We at the National Security Division have given an alternative to this. There is a technology that we are working on, helping work on. But up to that point, we have to make sure that any excessive use of imported oil has to be disallowed. Only for essential items. We need to go towards a slightly more conservative way of spending oil.
All right. So speaking of conservative measures and spending, the IMF has also, talked about Pakistan's commitment to advance the planned fiscal consolidation.
Sure.
It has also talked about completing the return to a market-determined exchange rate.
Yeah.
It has also talked about pursuing state-owned, I can see the smile on your face, so pursuing the state-owned enterprise and governance reforms to attract investment
Yeah, sure.
and support job creation.
Sure.
4 topics that are interlinked.
Of course.
How can the government move about that and create a space for positive development in the economic sector?
We'll take it in reverse. When we talk about state-owned enterprises, actually, the biggest we have to have the right diagnosis of the problem. The problem is not financial or structural that much as it is managerial and governance related.
Right.
So if we fix that, we can fix a lot of the SOEs. And that's like a 1 to 2 year process. You get good managers in, let them work. If it doesn't work, then you sell it. When we talk about consolidation of various aspects, when we talk about streamlining many of our revenue structures, because that's what we have to focus on. We've been through this perhaps 100 times. Going through it one more time, but we have to sort of diversify the way we look at it.
And what do you mean by diversifying the way we look?
For example, when we talk about increasing our domestic revenues for the government, that's basically through tax. So we've got around about 2 maximum million taxpayers. And I've been hearing this ever since I can remember, that we want to increase the net and the
Tax net,
and even the IMF has been talking about it. One way to do it, perhaps one new way to do it, is to simplify the process, is to just make auto tax returns part of the whole process, because many people are already paying tax. They're just not part of the active, logging onto the FPR system. And the FPR already has so much information from our CNICs that there can be auto filing as well. That's a slightly more revolutionary way of looking at it, but it's quite possible. We have to maintain a certain focus towards what IMF is saying, but we also have to immediately, and I cannot stress this enough, although we haven't talked about it earlier, we have to use this opportunity to galvanize our exports, especially those which do not require imports. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? You have IT exports, you have freelancers and everything, and by the way, a lot of work has been done on that to simplify their work process. However, we need to push it more aggressively, with a concerted effort from the whole offices of the government, instead of just 1 or 2 offices talking about it.
Or there's other things that the IMF has mentioned in its statement post the agreement. It talks about strengthening social assistance. Yes. It talks about stabilization policies under the bailout package. It talks about a bailout package buoyed by international partner support, signs of improved confidence. This is also something that the IMF is looking at, whether all the partners that we are working with internationally, the countries, our friendly countries, also support us or will support us in time of need in the future. Do you feel they have found that? Because I was seeing a lot of meetings that the IMF had with ambassadors of our friendly countries as well.
Sure.
Do you feel that confidence has been reached, and that is why there is this support for the agreement and the second tranche being released?
Most likely yes, because the IMF appears to be in a more amenable mood, because it was quite negative to begin with, if we remember 1 year ago, because we're not used to this IMF. We're used to an IMF that just asks us a couple of questions, gives us a list, and then gives us a waiver on most of the constraint of the restrictions in any case. So IMF appears to be quite confident of what's happening right now. One thing which I sort of forgot to touch is a free exchange rate. There is no country on earth that has a free exchange rate. It's a managed exchange rate. It's in a band of low and high. There is no currency on earth that is left free to market forces. So when I was going through that statement, I was waiting for the band. So I couldn't really see much talk about a managed band of a high and a low. You cannot let your currency go free. You have to manage it one way or another, and that does not mean control it. It means managing it, sort of steering it in the right direction for the health of the economy. So that's something that we need to actively work towards. Using the IMF's offices to improve our domestic currency management as well as international engagement is also going to be important. Coming back to what you just said about better partners, I think we're on that. We're very
support by our partners are friendly countries.
Yeah. So I think we're very close to that. But I mean, to be very honest, just between us, and everybody else who's watching, that the amount of money that we're talking about, this is really not that much. And there's such a lot of dust that's in the air regarding it's just like $3 billion. Really, it's not that much. The moment we use this opportunity and restructure 3 to 4 things internally, we can generate much more internally. That's what I'm really focusing on.
What are the factors do you feel that can push our economy further, and you said generate more than $3 billion in a short time, or even in a long term?
Simple. We restart the remittance loyalty program. There was some kind of a hitch in it. We restart that. Number 2, again, we refocus on exports like we had started. We focus on, and I hate to use this word, and that's not what I'm talking about, low-hanging fruits. There is no low-hanging fruit. It's always high up somewhere in the tree. But right now, there are certain exports that do not require capital investment. They do not require industries. So what you do is you focus on those right now, and you keep pushing that as best as you can. That starts to open things up. Right now, Pakistan has a problem of $6 to $12 billion. This is really not
that much.
It's not that much, but it's just it's like a tiny thorn stuck in our throat somewhere.
The IMF talks about strengthening macroeconomic stability. We hear it so much. I've discussed macroeconomic stability with you in the past as well. And laying the conditions for balanced growth. How do you lay these conditions? I mean, it's not as if we lay the seeds down. The fact is that this is a continued process of reforms that the government undertakes. But how does a layman understand that?
Balanced growth comes when all sectors of an economy and society grow. Now that's a mouthful, to be honest, despite the short words. Balanced growth is based on a domestic economic and social structure which is interweaved in a way where you have balanced output. Now, I'm not trying to complicate what you just said, but the point is, it's a nice thing to say. IMF likes to say these things, but every time you go, if you go to Thailand, if you go to Botswana, if you go to Gambia, they say the same thing. It's the same thing. It's supposed to be different for every country because every country has its own strength. Gambia, for instance, has agriculture and wood as a huge strength point. Pakistan has something else. We keep looking at it from a very negative perspective. We just haven't perhaps pushed it hard enough, our negotiation capacities. But what IMF is, at the end of the day, to be fair, what IMF is saying is, I'll just loosely translate what they said, fix your structure. Fix your hemorrhage, plug your hemorrhages, fix your structure, increase your revenues, reduce your expenses, make sure that you don't waste any money, and then talk about other things.
When you talk of macroeconomic stability and then macroeconomic sustainability, how different or similar are the both of them, or are they intertwined as well?
Yeah, of course they're intertwined. Stability and sustainability could be distant cousins, but they're still related. At the end of the day, when you talk about stability, you can, I dare say, talk...
With Pakistan's case as an example.
Sure. You would be talking about short-term stability. But when we talk about sustainability, we're talking about something that's medium to long-term. Medium to long-term thing is done through policy stability, something that I've been working on at the National Security Division. Policy stability, the moment we bring in policy stability, you suddenly start to see the second word, sustainability.
But it's very important, both stability and sustainability in the macroeconomic sector for Pakistan. As you said, you've been working on that as well in the energy sector, and there are other sectors also that meet that stability and the sustainability. How optimistic do you feel you are as far as Pakistan's economy, coming out of its difficult era and going towards the stability and strength? in the coming months? I wouldn't say weeks or days, but let's say months.
To answer your question, I am optimistic because we are moving in the right direction, but we must ensure that we maintain our course. Internally in our office, we have identified 16 steps. If we take them immediately, that immediately turns everything around, but they're pretty harsh steps.
Okay, but do you feel those hardships are implementable?
Yes.
Okay, easily.
That's why I'm talking about it.
Okay, all right. Wonderful. I hope we get to know about those steps very soon. Thank you so very much, Fahim Sardar, Senior Policy Specialist, who have joined us, who have talked to us about the agreement between